The church can be a saving grace for many, but on the other hand, it can be a place where lies and deception live. These are the top 5 terrifying things the church doesn't want you to know. Coming in at number 5, we have the Vatican Secret Archives. The Vatican Secret Archives is considered to be the world's most secure building, but why is it so locked down? What secrets are being hidden behind the walls? The amount of history located there is immense. The Vatican Secret Archives is home to the largest collection of Catholic books, documents, and doctrine in the world. It boasts letters from well-known figures such as Abraham Lincoln and Mary, Queen of Scots. It contains 53 miles of shelving with 35,000 volumes in the selective catalogue alone. The archives also include state papers, correspondence, account books, and many other documents the church has acquired over the centuries. Naturally, many people have speculated that there must be secret documents amongst the 50+ miles of shelving in the Vatican's archives. Of course, no one is allowed to browse the archives, which makes it even more mysterious. Only select scholars, academics, and journalists are allowed to enter, and this is a rule that will never likely change. Many believe that the Pope and many people around him keep very classified and secret information in the archives that they don't want the world knowing. One theory is that the archives contains correspondence between St. Paul and Emperor Nero pertaining to Jesus' existence and his biological descendants, and some believe that the Vatican may be hiding proof that Jesus did in fact exist or didn't exist at all. Next is the confirmation and evidence of alien life forms such as extraterrestrial skulls. Some claim that in 1998 skulls with elongated heads and small faces resembling aliens were found underneath the Vatican. Ever since, the Vatican has kept all evidence of aliens a secret to not discredit Christianity. Another secret being held from the world is the Grand Grimoire, which is an alleged medieval book that is believed to possess immense powers. It was written in the 16th century by Honorius of Thebes, who claimed to be possessed by the devil himself. In the book, it has instructions on how to make magic talismans and amulets, how to make magic spells, and even how to summon demons, and even offers instructions on how to summon the devil himself and make a deal with him. If the Vatican is keeping world-shattering secrets in its archives, we may never know due to its high level of security, and it only being accessible to a slight few. So our questions of what is really in there may never be answered. In at number 4, we have the Church of Rome, destruction of important Jewish historical documentation. In 1415, the Church of Rome took an extraordinary step to destroy all knowledge of the 2 2nd-century Jewish books that is said contained the true name of Jesus Christ. The anti-pope Benedict XIII firstly signaled out for condemnation a secret Latin treatise called Ma Jesu, and then issued instructions to destroy all of the copies of the Book of Alexei. No editions of these writings now publicly exist, but church archives recorded that they were once in popular circulation and known to early presbyters. Knowledge of these writings survived from quotations made by Bishop Hippolytus of Rome and Saint Epiphanius of Salamis, along with references in some early traditions of the Talmud of Palestine and Babylonia. The rabbinic fraternity once held the destroyed manuscripts with great reference, for they were comprehensive original records reporting of the life of Rabbi Jesus. Later, in a similar manner, Pope Alexander VI ordered all copies of Talmud destroyed. The Council of the Inquisition required as many Jewish writings as possible to burn with the Spanish Grand Inquisitor. Thomas de Torquemada, responsible for the elimination of 6,000 volumes at Salamanca. In 1550, Cardinal Carafa, the Inquisitor General, repealed all previous permission for priests to read the Talmud, which he said contained hostile stories about Jesus Christ, leading him to seize every copy he could find in Rome and burn them. Solomon Romano also burnt many thousands of Hebrew scrolls, and in 1559 every Hebrew book in the city of Prague was confiscated. The mass destruction of Jewish books included hundreds of copies of the Old Testament and caused irreversible loss of many original handwritten documents. The mass destruction of Jewish writings, the church overlooked 2 particular British documents that still exist to this day in the British Museum. Coming in at number 3, we have the Orphans of Duplessis. In the 1930s and 1940s in Quebec City was marred by unprecedented acts of corruption and repression due to a conservative revolution better known as the Great Darkness, which was led by Premier Maurice Duplessis, and many of the acts were involving the Catholic Church. In 1940, the Duplessis government and along with the Catholic Church began to diagnose orphan children with mental problems, even though these children were perfectly healthy. Due to this, thousands of orphan children were sent to a psychiatric institution of the church so that the church could receive a government subsidy for the treatment of these children. Unfortunately, this was a reality for so many because mental health wasn't as widely known as today, and it was unknown how to treat those suffering back then. At this time, many orphanages were converted into asylums for children, and more than 20,000 were misdiagnosed and imprisoned in asylums so that the Catholic Church could earn more money. According to reports, many of these children weren't orphans at all, but children coming from single mothers who were forcibly taken into church custody, and they didn't admit children out of wedlock. The people forced to be involved in this were subjected to nightmares, including drug testing and other medical experiments like electric shock therapy. In the 1990s, almost 3,000 survivors of the Duplessis orphan scandal revealed the horrific events they had to go through, but the government made a sad excuse of a settlement with the victims, and the Catholic Church remained silent to stifle the scandal. In at number 2 we have Joan of Arc. Most people know the story of Joan of Arc. She is mostly considered a hero of France for her role during the war. She is now considered a saint, but the Catholic Church hated her. She claimed that she was receiving messages from God, instructions on what she should do to help her people. This angered many higher-ranking officials within the church. Joan saw her first vision around the age of 13 in 1425. The figure she identified as Saint Michael, surrounded by angels, appeared in her garden. After receiving the vision, she wept as she wanted to go with him. Throughout her life, she continued to be visited and given messages from the Lord. By 1428, Joan's visions told her she must leave her home and go to France. Since then, she gained followers and support in her fight to recover France from English domination. The Catholic Church denounced her visions and set out to take her down. In 1430, Joan was captured. She was put on trial for heresy, even though Joan was a devout Christian. They gave Joan as many charges as they could, hoping she would be found guilty of at least one of them. The military were relieved of her capture. They believed her to have supernatural powers. They feared her as it was not typical for women to wield such power and command. One of the most well-known charges against Joan was that she wore men's clothing, something apparently illegal back then. In reality, this came from the fact that she wore armor while in enemy territory, something not seen as being ladylike for the time. The trial was not conventional for the time. It was clear no matter what she did, they were determined to find her guilty. Although she was impressive during the trial, she was ultimately found guilty. She was found guilty of heresy and sentenced to death. She was to be burned at the stake. Joan is seen as a hero and a saint today. The Catholic Church tries to distance themselves from her mistreatment. And finally, in at number 1 we have the Vatican's quest for aliens. It might surprise you to know that the Catholic Church has a keen interest in aliens. They hold a conference each year to talk about astrobiology. If you haven't heard that term before, it's a term they created to make their meetings about aliens seem more legitimate. The Vatican has often defended itself in the public about their interest in extraterrestrial. As they often state, evolution is not something they believe in. You would assume they also didn't believe in aliens. The Vatican even has its own team of scientists looking into the existence of these beings and attempting to make contact. The chief astronomer stated, "There is no conflict between believing in God and in the possibility of extraterrestrial brothers, perhaps more evolved than humans." He went on to explain that you cannot put limits on God's creative freedom, so it makes sense after creating Earth he would go to create other beings. Some even believe that humans are lost sheep of the universe, and we need to find the more evolved of God's creations. All of this would not be such a surprise if they hadn't condemned science since the creation of the church. In the 17th century, they condemned the astronomer Galileo for insisting that the Earth revolved around the sun. It seems they have progressed in some of their beliefs since then. Some believe that they spent a lot of money on their exploration into space and have even discovered a few things that they are keeping to themselves. Some historians believe that within the Vatican secret archive there is evidence of contact with extraterrestrials. It is not known why they would keep this information from the world. Do they want to use it to further their beliefs, or maybe they don't consider everyone to be worthy? We do know there are stories of communication with other beings, but the information is mostly kept with the church. In 1917, 3 children saw the Virgin Mary, who gave them a telepathic message. The message was that we are not alone on the planet. They warned that humanity needs to prepare for their return. The Catholic Church censored these messages. The only person who knew the full content of the message was the Pope, who refused to release the details of all 3. This is just one instance of messages received on Earth that have been held by the Vatican for years. It is believed they have no intention to release this information. The archive is heavily guarded. Who knows what could be hidden within their findings? Well, there we have it. I will see you in the next video.